Introduce the crew. These are a bunch of really close friends of mine that I've worked with a long time, starting with Sandy over here that works over at Pop Life. She'll be moderating.
Yes.
Lolo, who has started and has ran successfully Sweat Records, an independent record store here in Miami. Also Sweatstock. We're celebrating 20 years.
Wow.
Fucking sick. Brian, over under, Tam Tam, everything that's clever downtown that's really good is my man with the cowboy hat right here. Christina Crespi, who is on the city base for the Downtown Development Agency Association?
Downtown
Authority. It's an authority. Supports a lot of local Miami art, music, culture, downtown. She is in the city doing good work. She's a big advocate for us and for everything we do. So having her here is really important. And then my business partner works on everything with us, Koloma Kumbumski. So you guys can take it away.
Beautiful. Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Those watching on the live stream, thanks for tuning in. Today we're gonna focus on the intersection of business, nightlife, and creative industries in Miami. And I'll move on to the first question. Miami has grown exponentially within the past couple of years. And with that, the growth in businesses and creative scenes. What are some of the challenges that have come from this growth? And what are some of the unique opportunities you've seen that has created for emerging artists and entrepreneurs?
Okay. So I'm born and raised in Miami. I'm from Kendall. And shout out Southwest. Grew up next to Hot Wheels and really influenced a lot of my life. So I like to say Miami is a different city every 5 years because the way things change here and how transient it is and how people move it here, move away, move back. It's a ever-going flow. So with that, there's definitely challenges and, sorry, what was the second part of the question? We're just getting started.
What are the challenges and also what are the new opportunities?
Okay, the opportunities. I want to talk about those more because the challenges are ever present. The challenges are real estate. The challenges are the rent is too damn high and it's an expensive place to live, especially for creatives who have multiple hustles going on as we always have and many people will always have to if you're in the creative world. But there are opportunities. We're not one of those cities like New York where everything's kind of set in stone. There's a lot of room to create your own thing. And one of the cool things about seeing the lineup for this Points of View is seeing how many fresh faces and how many people have come up and started establishing themselves just by putting the work in, just by throwing parties, just by being at shows, being present, being part of the scene. And that kind of exchange, to me, that's the real opportunity. We do have an incredible community here. The fact that so many of us know each other, have put roots here, have been here for so long. That's great. That's a support network for all the new people coming in. And we just hope that y'all are taking advantage of many things as possible. And if you're in this room, you already are.
Sure. So I am not from Miami, but I have lived in Miami on and off since 2005, so I guess 20 years. And I definitely agree with what Lolo said that it is kind of a cyclical situation of change. I think that the last 10 years, it has changed faster than the 10 before it. I remember when I was a younger club-going kid, we really only had like one little zone that we could go to, kind of like the 14th Street, like little, I guess they called it Omni back then, but the Park West area, that was kind of where like the main going out thing was. You didn't have like small bars, small independent restaurants. That's really exploded in the last 10-ish years. So I know in my business, it's really changed faster. I think one of the biggest challenges is keeping up with everything new happening while also maintaining existing relationships, because you don't want those relationships you built over the last 10, 15 years, however long, to erode. But you also want to maintain space for new people to come in and exciting new ideas. So whether it's things like bookings or collabs or even just going out to a new restaurant to go eat to help support somebody else's place, it can be a lot to kind of like hey, this just opened, but I also want to go see my old friend, that like keep up with them in a great way. And also just if you are a competitive person, knowing that you have to stay one step ahead and not just rest on your laurels and say like, yeah, I'm cool, like I've been cool, like I'm gonna still be cool, or whatever word you want to use to substitute for cool. If you want to maintain your status in whatever field you're doing, like just knowing that somebody else is hungry and coming up and it's going to keep changing, and you have to sort of motivate yourself to stay with that and on top of that. So it's a great thing to see all the new things and all the change. It's a fun challenge, and definitely exciting to be able to be a part of like waves of new things, and help support and not really gatekeep. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Christina. I do run the Economic Development Agency for the City of Miami, which sounds a little bit complicated, right, when you talk about city services. But what we do is really create culture, right, in downtown Miami. And what we've done is create incentive programs, not only for businesses to come and lease space in downtown, but for creatives to be able to create and activate downtown. So we've done a multitude of different types of activations. If you came during the Holiday Village during December, you probably witnessed it. We've done multiple partnerships with the guys here, including the Michael Beebe concert during Art Basel, which was epic. And I think that what we do that's a little bit different is look at creative spaces to activate downtown and allow you all to tell us how we should activate those spaces. And so in the summer, we have a grant program that you can apply for. And it's anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000, and there's a committee that reviews that. And if you're we pretty much fund everybody, but definitely apply and keep up with our social media at Downtown MIA. We really are trying to incentivize not only business but arts and culture in downtown Miami.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, panel members. Wonderful to have you here. Hello, 94 of you. It's amazing to see everybody here, and hello, internet. I think it's really important to think about Miami in since the pandemic, where we really had explosive growth. And with explosions, you have beauty and chaos, right? And we have to really navigate through the chaos while being grateful for all the beauty that it brings. For us, it's been an incredible amount of different challenging things in this growth, but it's all really leading to beautiful things. For example, the growth of 3 Points, where doing a large scale festival like that is so difficult. Like, I can't even begin to tell you. A lot of you are involved with it, and it's really a labor of love. So having the city grow, having more people know about Miami, come to Miami, where for me as an electronic music promoter 15 years ago, the challenge was European DJs had this vision of Miami that was not it, and they wouldn't want to come, right? They'd only want to stick to Berlin or to what they thought was cool, or to New York or to Detroit, maybe, right? And now Miami is really on the map for music, for arts, for development. And I love something that Lola said, where she said, things are not cemented yet here, where a lot of people or a lot of talent was moving away from Miami before the growth. A lot of my friends were leaving to LA. A lot of my friends were leaving to New York. A lot of my friends were leaving to Europe, where now they can stay here and really grow incredible roots with beautiful branches and have fruits. And when you think about big cities, in their moments, they had what we're going through. But when you think about big cities today, like New York, you can only be a little birdie on one of those branches that's grown for the last 100 years there. So for me, the most exciting thing is that we're infants in this wonderful time, and we're super lucky to be here.
And for me, being born and raised here on Miami Beach, and to see all the various different cities and cultures come together, right? And like really create roots in culture, and everybody really wants to see everybody thrive. I think that that's been a real change. The pride in the 305, right? I think that that's really important that we all talk about that message, whether you're from here, not from here, you moved here. We do really have a sense of place, a sense of culture, and I think that everybody really does have the best intentions to make the city thrive.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That's so good. Okay, on the next one, I want to talk about supporting the art scene. Collaboration is key to a thriving creative scene. How have you successfully partnered with local artists, musicians, and businesses to create spaces that benefit both culture and commerce?
We can switch it up. Yeah. So collaboration and innovation, right? In order for us to think differently about what we're doing, we need different points of view, like what we're doing today. It's super important. This is a great example of collaboration, of minds coming together. In our business, we have a lot of different venues, and we try to find ways so that they collaborate with the community, with the city, with other cities, and with each other. Like in my office, you get tired of hearing me say, we gotta cross-pollinate ideas between Floyd, between Jolene, between 3 Points. How do we do this, right? And that cross-pollination of ideas, of passions, of different things like that is what really leads innovation. And without it, Miami wouldn't be where it's at. It's really a collaborative effort all throughout.
So I think collaboration is really important in so many different segments of business, right? None of us are perfect. We don't know it all, right? So when you work together, you can create more magical opportunities. And I have an amazing team at the DDA, super creative, so blessed to work with that team. And we have, like, during the pandemic, kind of like evolved into really wanting to ignite the culture scene in Miami. And so for the 125th birthday of the city, we looked at different spaces and we saw that courthouse, you know, that usually you go for bad reasons, right? Or good reasons, depending on who you are. Mostly bad. But we looked at that space and saw it in a different way. And we 3D mapped the story of the city, because for me, it was really important to tell the story of the city, you know, the culture of the city, that we started from the Tequesta Indians, Julia and Henry, and all of that story was told on that building through this 3D mapping. And we collaborated with the Magic School, which is the Miami Arts and Gaming Institute at Miami-Dade College, and gave students the opportunity to animate that story. And we 3D mapped that building, and then we partnered with like local recording studios that were in downtown. And we had everything from Fetty Wap to local rappers, you know, perform on a stage on Flagler Street at the courthouse, and it was epic. And because of that, our partners at 3 Points and you all, you know, saw that space and did bigger things, you know, and I think that that ignited other business opportunities for others to come, open up their clubs, open up their restaurants. We changed the law 5-6 years ago for bars and restaurants to be next to each other because there was distance requirements. We noticed that that was an issue. And once we did do that, we saw the influx of business, of the culture, of the arts, and we really are, you know, the club kids of Miami are coming back to downtown, which is pretty cool. Before you would leave here at 5 o'clock, there was nothing to do. Now, I mean, it's popping.
Definitely. I remember when we signed the lease to our bar, the only bar that was downtown was Pub One. And then that closed like 3 months after we signed our lease. And there was just nothing. And now you look around and it's like every block there's something, which is great. It's amazing. And I think to the collaboration point, that's probably one of the most core tenets to what we do. For us, it's a little bit, there's like 2 prongs to that. There's the business to business side. So at Tam Tam is doing like a new event every week at a different restaurant, always doing pop-ups. We just threw a big Lunar New Year party a couple weeks ago that maybe some of you guys went to, but we had 5 different restaurant vendors just for that, and I think 10 acts during that. So there's like the event side, and then there's the pop-ups that we've done. A lot of smaller restaurants or people that maybe don't have the infrastructure to house their own full-time restaurant, but maybe it's a talented chef or a group of people that just want like a venue to be able to do what they do. and we've hosted a few of those. And that's actually how one of the ways how Tam Tam turned into Tam Tam was popping up with us. And we're about to open another restaurant that kind of followed that same model of going from pop up to permanent. So that's that side. With the artist side, we've always done our best to support as much as we can as a small bar. You can fit about 75 people in our bars, so the acts that we book are usually more on the up and coming side. But I think just in terms of DJs, like we've been lucky enough to book, I don't know if it's gotten up to 1,000, but hundreds over the last 5 years. Like we used to do all 7 days, we'd book it, some kind of programming, which is great, given us a great chance to meet a lot of people, have a lot of people see the space, party, have fun. And then in the arts community, that's always been kind of the most natural for me as growing up with friends in that universe. We did a program for a little while. We called it like the guest bartender. And they would be able to come through and program the back area of the space however they wanted, whether it was like a gallery kind of setting or projection, or more of a performance aspect, just to give another space where there was no charge to come and do what they wanted to do. So it's always been a big thing. I think it's one of the most fun and rewarding parts about doing any of this is the ability to like collaborate and meet new people and grow community. Otherwise it gets, I don't want to say dull, but doing the same thing every day, if you don't have new friends and new challenges, can be, monotonous, sterile. So it's been great.
Kind of all we do is collaborate, and part of the joy of being independent is that we get to do it with whoever we want and say no to things that aren't right or don't make sense in the moment. If hopefully a bunch of you have been to Sweat, but we have an in-store event space that, especially post-COVID, once things opened back up, we have kicked into high gear, and we have shows several times a month because we're actually one of the only all ages stages in the city where people who aren't 18 yet can come and enjoy a show. And so, or play a show. We actually hosted one of Denzel Curry's first sets ever back in the day because he was too young to get into other clubs. So that the all ages element has always been really important to us. As I said, I grew up here, and it felt like one of the only things you could do as a teen was get dropped off at the mall or go see a movie. And we want kids to engage with culture because they grow into people like you who are now having their own artistic careers and making cool things and pouring it back in. So we love working with young bands. We've been hosting a lot of release parties and stuff, so definitely get in touch if any of you have anything cool that you have coming out. We also have an intimate space, it's about 75 people as well. And those, it's really important for any scene to have places of all sort of capacities so that different experiences can happen. So, we do everything from having a talk 2 weeks ago sold out with Black Miami Dade, who told us all about Josephine Baker in Miami desegregating nightclubs. And then next week we have a national artist, Caroline Rose, playing on Wednesday. So we have a huge variety of programming. We love it. We love collaborating. It's definitely one of the most fun parts of Miami, and magical things have happened from it.
I love that. Thank you. I do want to see more of that in Miami because I think one of the only places I can think of is Churchill's used to have that as well. Like bands used to just come. Yeah. So, but for one of the only places that you have all ages. But with that, you saying that with places closing, I do want to focus back on the rapid growth of Miami and how that has created challenges for businesses. And just wanted to see how businesses have adapted to that rapid change. What challenges have you guys had? Are there instances where like local government has restricted you or your operation, and how have you navigated these shifts? I know that Brian Over Under was closed for a minute. So I don't know if you want to speak about that, or you, Lolo, with Sweat Records. I don't know if you had challenges, but yeah.
Yes, a lot of challenges. I signed my first lease for a restaurant when I was, I think, 30 years old. and I thought that I was the like smartest, most well-equipped, like I had it down and I didn't need help from anybody, and I was gonna like change the world, and I was gonna do all this cool stuff, and it was gonna be awesome. And found out fast that there are great people to help you through things in Miami, but there are also people that are ready to take advantage of you and lead you in the wrong direction. We did, as mentioned by Sandy, have an issue at Over Under. We signed a lease there in December of 2016. We didn't actually open until 2020. We're about to get to our 5-year anniversary, but we've had keys to the space for almost 10 years. It took us 3.5 years to get it open, and when we finally opened it, it was like right in the beginning of the pandemic, which is not the best time to open a bar. The biggest challenge there was, if you've never been through the permitting process in Miami, or even if you have been through the permitting process in Miami for a bar or a restaurant, you could be the slickest person, you could be David, and you'd still like be banging your head against the wall with this stuff. There is no real kind of hand holding. You have to learn the hard way a lot of times. Now downtown has an amazing thing that the DDA has set up. It's called the Permit Clinic. So you can go and you can meet with the reviewers and that sort of thing and get help. But even with that, it can still be a really challenging thing. What happened at Over Under, we hired the wrong attorney. We hired a general contractor who was fraudulent. He like didn't have a license, and he told us he had a license. He hired us a carpenter who took a $13,000 deposit and then claimed bankruptcy and like left Miami. And when you're like a 30-year-old kid, like trying to build everything yourself, and you're losing like a $13,000 deposit, it's like the world is caving down on you. We got to the point where we were a few days away from opening, and we found out that so Christina, sorry, I have to backtrack, it's a long story, but Christina had mentioned how liquor laws changed downtown. I actually like cried openly in the DDA office in front of Commissioner Ken Russell, like begging, like, please change these laws so we can open, because Lost Boy and us were both like not allowed to open our bars. They changed the rules, and they made it so that if you are zoned as a bar tavern, you are allowed to use your liquor license. But if you're a restaurant, you aren't allowed to use your liquor license. My boomer attorney fought against me zoning it as a bar tavern, and forced, like, he did the paperwork saying it's a restaurant. We got literally 3 days away from opening, had all of our staff hired, we're out of money, paying rent during the pandemic, and found out from this guy at zoning, like, oh no, you are not zoned properly, you can't open. And we're a bar. It's like, if you guys have been there, it's obviously a bar. But because the code says restaurant, which is more difficult to be than a bar, we were not allowed to use our liquor license. So the same attorney, I guess, realizing he had to cover his ass and figure something out for us, told us, no, it'll be okay. Use a catering license. We'll be able to set you guys up. He was also the person who sold us and leased us the liquor license, so he's getting payments the whole time. And long story short, the enemies that I made, or however else, we ended up getting raided by the state alcohol, like, people came in with like machine guns, shut us down in the middle of like a night with like a DJ about to play. I was in Panama, and I'm getting calls like they're about to arrest me, and I'm like, yeah, now I deserve it. I came back. They seized all of our inventory. They basically tried to make us build a case. I'm not going to get into that stuff, but it took us a year to get back open, and that year of getting back open, Christina helped. A lot of people helped. But I can say from experience, like, if you don't do things, I don't want to say the right way, if you don't do things the Miami right way, it can cause a lot of like heartache and headache. And my biggest advice about it, like that I've made my mission going forward, because I've gone through everything now, is to kind of be somebody that can help new people avoid all of that and like not have to go through that. Because, you know, but yeah, sorry for the long history lesson, but
I think like during that time we learned together too, like we didn't realize that these things were happening, and what I and the team realized was that there are business owners coming into spaces not understanding what the zoning was and then getting stuck in these situations, and then we created the permit clinic and we helped the way that we could. But to your point is like you really got to know and do your homework, right? Now you can go online at the city website, you type in an address if you want to open a bar, if you want to open a restaurant or whatever it is, you can see what the requirements are and then go from there, right? So you're not like investing all this money up front, but that doesn't take away from the Cowboys of Miami that, want to play games. That being said, that's everywhere, but we learned together, and Over Under's been such a great success, and, kudos to you for sticking it out, figuring it out. And for being an advocate for downtown.
And we love Over Under. Yay.
Yeah, amazing for that. I feel your pain tremendously. I think every space that you guys know about that we operate has gone through a similar story. Jolene, where we're at, took about 2 years to open. In those 2 years, you have staff that you're paying, you have a build out that you've made, you have inventory sitting, you have all these things. You're paying lawyers, retainers, you're going back and forth with the city, all these things, right? So, and space, I can't even get into the details of that. It's a consistent fight to stay for certain places. But I think for us, thinking about it from the ground up, you're an entrepreneur, you're going to sign a lease, and you have to think about regulations and permits and challenges. The first thing you have to do is, and people use this term loosely, due diligence. It's like everybody says, did you do your due diligence, right? And then you consult with a lawyer. And no, you have to be super hands-on at the beginning of anything. You have to be hyper-focused on all the details. It's one lawyer, maybe it's two lawyers. It's the general contractors. You have to double-check what everyone says with someone else. You have to assume that everyone is actually incorrect. You have to prove that they're correct to them and to yourselves. So that's the way to do it. Like if you lease a space and they tell you the refrigerator works, I don't believe you. You go in, you plug it in, and you check that it works. You wait 24 hours and you make sure the ice works, right? You have to do it at that level to avoid a lot of headaches as you open up a business in Miami or any big city. I mean, you'll hear this from Mexico City, you hear it from New York, you hear it from Paris. Any major city, you hear these things, because on the other side of business, there is the regulators that are trying their best to make sure that it's also not the wild, wild west, right? So for us, it's not really about resisting regulation. It's about forming the right relationships, understanding it really well, and it's not easy to understand. It's bureaucracy, hyper complicated. It's not meant for the average person. It's not even meant for the average lawyer. So it's great that you have a clinic, but you know that there's the most important lesson there. It's resilience.
Yeah.
Like any big city, and again, it goes back to the beginning. Miami is now a really big city. It's really important. It's in the map globally. So these challenges are natural. We shouldn't be fighting them. We should be looking to improve the process. But if you're opening a business tomorrow or you're in the process of opening, they're going to exist, and you got to be resilient, and you have to be really focused on all these details again. We have another bar that we've been trying to open for almost 2 years. It's not open yet. We don't have an opening date yet. We've been paying rent for 11 months. So it's like, and you have to go back to the landlord and try to make some sort of agreement to, hey, we're paying rent for 11 months, dude. Like, it's going to be really cool when we open, but give us a break, put it at the end of the lease, the rest of the rent, or extend our lease or something, right? but in those times, we also find a lot of creativity, a lot of collaboration. I think for me, David, Davide, operating all these different venues and festivals, something that we were missing for a long time was a mentor. It was just us being this triangle of force and this like bull going through walls. And I think it's really important to, as much as you seek other things, to also seek mentorship, no matter how smart you think you are or whatever. Mentorship is really important because there's always someone above us that has already done it. And I think that's a really important thing with this subject as well.
And had it not been for you all like explaining these difficulties, we wouldn't have that permit clinic. So if you are opening a business, you can come on Thursdays from 9 to 2 o'clock, and all disciplines are there to help you kind of navigate the process. And I think that that came from listening to the business owners and really just like really wanting Miami to thrive, because I'm from here and born and raised, and it just was not okay, you know. And so when you have issues like that, you talk to the change makers, the leaders in power, you like really get involved in you know, your local politics and vote, and all that stuff is really important when it comes to this stuff. You know, so I really do implore all of you to continue to do that.
Well, and to apply sort of what we're all saying, every artistic endeavor, every band, act, DJ is kind of its own small business. So when you're moving forward in your career, you really want to take the time to make sure that deals you're entering into and contracts and whatnot are all in order, and not just in order because you actually looked through them. I mean, if there's a terms and conditions to read over once in your life, it's your own contract. But get people smarter than you to come look over it too. Get people who specialize in IP law and different things like that and copyright to make sure that everything's in order, because you know, I've watched hundreds of music documentaries, and half the time the villain is someone in the artist's own circle who screwed them or their record label or something. So, you know, for all of you out there who are pursuing these careers, just advice to do the diligence as well and make sure that the people you're working with know what the deal is between you all and between your future collaborators. So, and yeah, we've definitely experienced our fair share of Miami fuckery too. We had a really bad sub-landlord who lied to us and told us we were going to lose our space. And so I spent a third of a year looking for new locations, only to find out once we opened up our dilemma to the greater community that no, this guy was an asshole that no one liked, and we could sign direct with our landlords around him a few months later. So thankfully, knock on wood, that's why we've been in our space 18 years now.
Resilience.
Awesome. Really great insight, guys. Thank you so much. I want to talk about the future of Miami. What are the trends you see coming in the next 5 to 10 years in Miami? And if you can advise for the new generations on like what to expect or how to get ready for it.
Definitely a trend, if you're in this room, you know, is analog culture, in real life stuff, beautiful sound systems, high quality audio, having the best possible real life experience you can. And it's amazing that Miami now has a whole ecosystem of bars, venues, record shops, audiophile places, etc., because we did not have all of that 10, 15 years ago. So the fact that you can go to, you know, Jolene, to Dante's, to Soundlux Audio, where we host Classic Album Sundays once a month, like these are incredible experiences that are really, frankly, life-changing for a lot of people. It's been amazing to see. And as a store selling vinyl records in 2025, we're doing the best we've ever done. We are selling the widest variety of music that I can't even believe, and I'm the vinyl buyer. I'm ordering stuff like, no one's gonna buy this random Japanese record, and then boom, selling a handful of copies. So people down here have fantastic taste already. I'm not worried about that, but having experiences in real life, seeing people come together in all these beautiful organic ways, like in person, around food, around music, around culture, this really is the future. And Miami's strength has always been its diversity, and the fact that you can go explore so many different cultures, subcultures, kinds of music, everything, if you're even slightly motivated. It won't be handed to you here, but if you are slightly motivated, you can have the best damn life for yourself. So I think this is a great place to explore all that.
I think I have a a funny take on the trend thing. I do my best to understand trends and to try to see trends coming, but I also think that once a trend is there, you're already too late in a way. I think chasing trends or trying to do a trend is like your fastest way to burning bright and flaming out. I think the best thing to do is what you think is great and what you feel good about and what you'll fight for even when it's hot or cold will lead you to the most success. Because, you know, at least in the restaurant business or the bar business, like you can look back at what things were like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and it's, you know, there used to be like mason jars on every table and like Edison bulbs were like a thing. And, you know, now you go and there's like disco balls in bathrooms and like there's like always something that's gonna be like everywhere really fast and then it's nowhere. Once it's everywhere, it's nowhere. And with product, it's things like, you know, there was like craft beer was a really big thing. And then when I was bartending, I was in like the huge mixology thing, which is still, all these things are still great, but they were like, everybody was saying like, oh, we have to do this. It's like a default. It's like everybody has to do this same thing. And then it just becomes that nobody's really doing it because it loses the people that aren't really feeling like this is my thing, they don't do it the same way, if that makes sense. So what we've always tried to do is literally just like what we want to do, and you know, hope that works. It makes it a lot easier when you're losing money, if you're losing money doing something that like you feel great about, and that you're not going to get like sick of. So I think in a positive way of putting it, like I do see positive trends in Miami towards a lot more health focus and like free time and maintaining work-life balance and those sorts of things in like our lives. I think in my business, a lot of the trends are so fast that it's hard to say like what's going to be in 5 years, because in 5 years it might have changed like 3 times. I do think I have like trends that I hope for. The return of live music to Miami is like a big thing that I sort of pray for. No offense to this room if this offends anybody, but like everybody's a DJ now. Like I DJ'd for 2 hours last night. So it's, you know, and a lot of people are incredibly talented, but I do think that there's also space for other kinds of music, performance art, like putting different things on stage. I think we've been so successful at like the things that we're great at that like I always hope that we don't push away the fringes, because sometimes the fringes and those other things are like they circle back around and they become the important thing. So that's kind of my little weird take on the trend thing.
I mean, I can talk about trends in economic development and real estate and all that jazz, but I feel and we've seen a trend in that there's more professionalism, right? There are more people seeking career opportunities in music and in creative spaces and in business, and that more locals are staying here and wanting to create their lives here. So I think that that's really important, and like to really focus on your career path and educate yourself as much as, you know, whatever that means for you. I think that's really important, and like that we create the ecosystem that we need. We don't want our locals to leave. We don't want that brain drain. We want everybody to stay, and we want, you know, we want the newbies to come, but also like, you know, we want everybody to stay and actually like create careers here. So I think that we're seeing that happen, and I think our local institutions and our you know, Miami Dade College, as an example, has so many different programs, and like just really exploring that and what that can mean to educate yourself, I think is really empowering. You know, reading is a very, you know, basic thing, but it is very important. And I think that the more that you educate yourself, the bigger opportunities come to you. And you know, that's what I foresee in the future.
I don't like that word. It's always a guessing game or a speculation when you're trying to look for that, as opposed to being the driving force. And I think Miami is now a driving force. where decades ago we were looking at Europe for trends or New York for trends. It's the other way around now. Now we're being looked at. And when you're being looked at, you have the luxury of being true to yourself, doing what you love, doing what you want to do, as long as you do it with high quality, like the sound studios, with being a professional. I think the most important trend that I am seeing is being more educated, being more cultured, being more open-minded in Miami, because it's driven by competition. If you're not at the top of your game here, you can't survive. That's the reality. And yes, that's challenging, but it's also quite beautiful because every conversation you have is now a lot more developed. You enrich each other a lot more. So for me, the trend is Miami is the driving force. And we just got to keep working as hard as we can on the things we love.
Thank you. I have a friend who's a business owner who once said, look at what that city lacks and do that, because then you'll be busy and successful, because then you're not competing. So, I don't know. Now it's time to open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions on the crowd you'd like to ask. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So we started so long ago, we had a MySpace page. And we were very broken in our early 20s, but we did a proto Kickstarter and literally sold promissory notes to our friends and family saying, if you give us $1,000, we'll give you $1,100, you know, in a few months or whenever we get there. So, you know, we were scrappy, and there's still ways to be scrappy and pull funding together. There's still a lot of arts grants out there, city, county organizations, corporations. So, you know, in the beginning, you know, it looked a lot different than it did today. And you probably need a lot more startup capital than we did back then when rent was really different and things were different. But it was definitely still a community effort, and asking for help is a crucial thing that you're going to have to learn at some point in your life. So you might as well learn it today.
I think that it's a great question because access to capital is something that still is tough for us. We have, between like the different things that we're doing, we have 4 or 5 things in the pipeline. And I know that it's crazy, but the amount of money that we need for each one, we try to keep everything very small. And so the budgets for each one are sort of like manageable. The budgets for everything that we do are sort of manageable. We also do all the construction that we can, anything we can do ourselves, we do. Like whether it's the woodworking, the metalworking, digging holes in the ground, taking out trash, going to Trash Mountain and Kendall, like whatever it is, like whatever you have to do, you kind of have to do. I also think it's just being realistic. It's like you don't have to open a huge nightclub the first thing that you do. You can open a small room, and once that room is full, then maybe you've moved on to the next size. It's kind of setting realistic expectations and goals for yourself. But yeah, the access to capital thing, depending on what you're doing, is always going to be one of the most challenging things, especially if you try to be like a responsible partner and you only want to do business and not like screw people, and you're not just trying to like take people's money, you're trying to like do right by them. That like fiscal responsibility is very like crushing pressure-wise to make sure like, okay, this person, this small investor gave me $20,000, we'll say. That $20,000 is a big deal to, you know, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. $20,000 is like a year of rent for me. So money is still like always going to be the biggest limiting factor for a younger person. I think unless your parents, like you have bank of mom and dad. So what I would say to that is like, one, be the best at what you do. If you're the best at what you do, then like you're gonna find people, or if people are gonna find you. As like tough as that is to say. Two, start small and build and build and build and go over. Like I was just talking to her when she arrived about remembering when I went to the first version or one of the first versions of Sweat in like a tiny unair conditioned room at the back of Churchill's where it's like 30 records, and being like, this is the coolest place I've ever seen when I was like, 21 or something. And so that became that, then that, then that. And that's sort of a path that you can take. Prove yourself. And once you've proven yourself and you have numbers, you have a business plan, you can really start to blow up with that. And my last thing, it's sort of like a shameless plug for Christina, but if you are thinking about business downtown, there's like a grant that people don't even know about it, but there's a grant that you can get for up to $50,000 to open up a business in downtown. And it's like depending on what you're doing, $50,000 is like an insane amount of money. And people just, if you don't know, you don't know. So trying to find those grants, find those opportunities can be a real make or break. And if you do your best to like kind of educate yourself, whether it's in a neighborhood or a type of thing, you can piece it together. But yeah, money is always going to be like the root of all whatever.
He stole my thunder there. So yeah, we do have a grant for businesses to incentivize them to come into downtown. So if you open up a retail ground floor business, you're eligible for $50,000. And we think we do a good job of telling that story through our various different social media channels, but we try to implore for everybody to get involved and like understand what we do, but we know that that's difficult, day to day. But I would say for me, the question was more about like growing up and how we basically got here, right? For me, it was really testing the waters, figuring out, like, try something here, whether I liked it or not. And for me, it was a real passion for local government. I grew up in the park system on Miami Beach. I loved that. And then kind of like worked my way through that. And I did whatever anybody wanted me to do once I got those positions. I didn't complain. I didn't, ask questions. Like, I showed up on time. Like, it was being relevant, being present, and really doing and going the extra mile. And then people get to notice you, and then they elevate you, and you kind of like climb the ladder like that. Like having that integrity and really like being accountable for yourself and like showing up, I think is really important as a young person in business, in any business, right? I didn't open up my own business, but my parents were small business owners, so I witnessed that, and I did not want anything to do with that, but I do respect it, and which is why we created all these business incentive programs. But for me, it was really showing up and testing the waters and just like really being relevant and working hard.
Thank you. I really like your question because it brought me back to like 20 years ago. So I'm 17 years old. I don't have any access to any capital. I'm an undocumented immigrant. My parents don't have any money. So what's the definition of capital? Is really like, we always have all these like ideas of capital, loans, banks, blah, blah, blah. No. For me, the definition of capital is work hours. There's your capital. You work your ass off, you have capital. That's what I was doing. Starting out, I had 3 jobs. I would work my ass off, get paid very little an hour, put that money aside, and use that money to do little things. And those little things, little by little, grow. And the importance wasn't to put out a product as much as it was to create community. If you're in a space where you're creating community, the bigger capital for bigger projects will start to come. But the best capital is always the one that comes from your own work hours. Why? Because when you get to bigger levels, capital comes with a commitment and fiscal responsibility, like Ryan was saying. And that looks a whole different ways the bigger you grow, to the point that like maybe it's not necessary. Sometimes capital comes with commitments that you don't like or you may not want. That impede on your freedom as a creative. So there's all sorts of levels, right? The example that Lola was saying with artists signing with record labels or things like this, a lot of the times they dangle a little bit of capital in front of them and they sign something that they should have never signed, right? So if it's your own, if it's a fruit of your own work, that's the best. If you start realistic, small building, that's the best. It's really all about working hard. That's what even an investor that looks at you is going to look at that beyond anything. Yeah.
Hi, so my name is Andy Garcia. I go by Jack Maker musically. I don't really have a question, more of a statement. Thank you for doing this. This is insane. I've lived in Detroit. I'm Miami born and raised, 305 till I die, but I spent some time in Detroit. I've been to Italy a little bit, been to New York a little bit, and I feel like Miami has always lacked one thing, community. Maybe because I'm a little younger, 29, pero I don't know. It's cool to, and I think what I'm realizing is that we're building it, right? We're at the stage now where it's a growing big city, and just having these spaces, third spaces, and just that are accessible, that are giving back to the community, like each and every one of you is doing. Just thank you.
Thank you.
We
for
appreciate
saying
it,
that.
I'm sure.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I second that. I am Eddie P. I'm an event producer, and just curious what advice you guys have for like up and coming event producer launching an event series in Miami. And obviously talent costs, talent booking, those booking fees are extremely high, guarantees, things like that. Like, what advice would you have for someone that wants to have a global event series, but growing it here in Miami whilst not losing every dollar you have along the way and making some money, but it's more purposeful than money, but obviously you can't lose all the money you have along the way? What advice would you have?
I'm gonna take this one. Eddie's actually a great event producer, and he's working really hard. You should be proud of the stuff you're doing, and I think you're on the right path, especially with how persistent you are. So that's one of the keys, being persistent. In my experience, we've lost all of our money multiple times. In my experience, we have been at the point that we split $100 each for grocery money so that we could have food while we talk to our landlords to let us pay rent late. So with artist bookings and the competitive market, sometimes it just rains that night and no one comes out and you lose all your money. These things do happen. You have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for that, learn something, and understand that success is not just measured in profits, it's measured in how much your character grows with each thing that you're doing. Beyond that, advice to make money is you have to be very meticulous with how you spend everywhere across the board. You shouldn't be spending half your budget on decorations, right? So you have to like really look at your budgets. We had a session on event budgets, I think tomorrow or it was today, I'm not sure when, but that's super important. It's something that we've been learning still, and we're still fine-tuning every single day. Every single day I'm fine-tuning that. Because the cost of talent is higher, the cost of alcohol is higher. Something we haven't talked about was the inflationary period we are continuing to go through. Inflation was like this whole thing in the media, and like it went away on the media, but it hasn't really stopped, right? So there's so many variables that you have to look at. But the main thing is you have to be ready to fall, and you have to be ready to stand up again when it comes to event production and bookings.
I'll share. Thank you, Koma. I'll share that you got to figure out a business model that when you're booking talent, you're getting something out of them, right? So, like spider marketing, right? That you're booking and they're talking about your event, because in the end, what drives your success, right? It's the people coming to it. So you really want to get the word out. And if there's anything about Miami, it's really hard to get the word out in some cases, and it's very last minute and whatnot. So you got to make sure that the team that you're creating and the talent that you're booking is telling that story, making sure that they're, you know, sharing the assets, like communication amongst everything, and that the contracts are all tied to that, so that you're gonna make that money in the end because they're telling that story and people are coming to your event. That's my advice.
Partnerships, like we talked about earlier. If you have, you know, like 3 Points brilliantly does, they make sure to always have local artists on so that there's always a local buzz generated by those artists and the people that they're inviting to the festival as well. So if you're trying to bring global talent to Miami, that's great. I've been saying we have the biggest, best, and most interested audience we've ever had. And you can see that because there's so many shows at the Bandshell, at Space and Floyd in the Ground, at, you know, Zeze, all over the city. We're getting more shows and people want to go to them. So, you know, I definitely have always believed in if you book it, they will come. It just has to be the right thing. And the more you can sort of involve community partners to be spreading the word for you, the better.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question. I'm going to go over here at the end.
Hey, what's up? My name is Jay. I make music under the name OG Neil J. And first of all, I really appreciate all of y'all for just having this event for all creatives. This is really amazing. So as I'm making music and I'm going up, I see that there's a trend, obviously, of people making merch as they get bigger and they get a bigger fan base. But I wanted to ask you guys, when do you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, I need to copyright this? Because I know doing certain things like that costs a lot of money. And I know majority of people are putting out designs. And I just wanted to get a better outlook inwards on when to do it. You know what I mean? Because I've seen people get their stuff bootlegged from China and stuff. And it's crazy. But yeah.
I mean, I'm not an IP lawyer, but there are creative ways to copyright your own things. There's ways to certified mail yourself an envelope with information inside that's dated and marked and things like that. So there are definitely creative, non-expensive ways you can go around it, but there are also legal resources for artists that you can look into who can help you and give you just more detailed advice on that. But definitely want to give you props for the inclination to make merch, because there's nothing that's more annoying than going to see an awesome piece of music and not being able to support them with some money and take something home that's a part of them. I always say merch is a gift to your fans. If you're being cranky about it, don't. They want to support you. They want a cool t-shirt. Everybody wears t-shirts. And, that's why Sweat has an awesome merch section on our website and in our store, because not everyone collects vinyl, and that's okay, but everybody wears t-shirts and hats and drinks out of cups. So we got all that stuff. And you should definitely, as an artist, be thinking about what the world of your merchandise looks like. They do give a Grammy for packaging. This is an important thing since day one of the music industry. And what's even the point of having physical product if you're not putting art and love into it? So, I definitely encourage everyone to do that. How many of you know that Miami has a vinyl plant? Okay, that's a problem. They're actually under new ownership, and it's in Opelika, and it's been there since the 70s or 80s. It used to be called Final Vinyl, and it's where they pressed all the Tough Gong, Marley stuff back in the day. It's where they pressed all the Two Live Crew, and it's right up the street, and you can save $1 a record by going to drive and pick up your records yourself. And I think minimum runs are 300. So we're going to have a session at Sweat sometime soon to introduce people in the local industry if they're curious about the vinyl making process. But these are all great things that establish you as a musician, build your legacy, build your discography. They really solidify things. And again, it's a gift to the fans. It was called M Projects. I think now it's going to be called Licorice Pizza. It's in partnership with there's an LA pressing plant called Licorice Pizza, and I think they have a partnership now. So, but it's right up on 141st Street, and it's right there, and it's awesome.
So I don't have a lot of insight into the copyright aspect, but it did make me think a little bit about sort of part of what you're getting at, that I definitely feel like I had to confront a lot earlier in my like career, we'll say, which is the idea of somebody kind of like jacking your stuff or stealing, feeling like they're stealing your idea or using your idea or being inspired by your idea. I would say, just as a general premise, not to let yourself get too lost in that sauce also. There are cases where somebody is profiting off of your idea, and when they're bigger than you and they're taking your idea and they're making money off that, that is like the most like infuriating thing possible. But also like trying not to let yourself get deflated or like too obsessive with that aspect of like, I'm doing this and this other person is doing something like sort of similar, because a lot of times we all have similar inputs and so the outputs can be similar. Like I know one of the things I did at my bar that I thought was like a signature thing was we were doing like the frozen drinks with the cups and the logo and everything, and then like by the next year I saw like 4 places that were like doing the same thing, and I'm like, what the like this is, come up with a new idea, and a lot of things like that. And then I just realized like, who cares, like, and I'm not saying who cares with what you're saying about merch, just as a general thing, like try not to let yourselves get somebody came up with a party name that's similar to your party name, like you said handstand and somebody else is doing like hand wash. Like don't let yourself get like too bogged down or bugged out by that. Keep like fighting, coming up with new ideas, like pushing yourself creatively, so that like that one idea isn't your only idea, and that one thing isn't something that you have to like let consume you. Like keep grinding out new ideas and working and putting in the work, and that'll help you with a lot of things. But yeah, I wish I had more insight into what you're saying, because I've definitely like that is something that I think the small guy always has to fight, is the big guy trying to make money off of them. So I appreciate the question.
All right, panelists, we've reached the end of our panel. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lolo, Brian, Christina, Paloma. Thank you, 3 Points, Miami Community Radio. Thank you so much. See you next time.
So we almost took, well, we didn't almost take it. We were trying to take Las Rosas, and I've been telling myself, like,
Check, check. Hey guys, next panel is artist management and running a label. We have John Miller here. We're gonna get going with that in about 10 minutes, okay? Thank you.